I'm not going to say anything more. Let's just ask Dr. Bosco to speak. Yeah, we have two people to speak as keynotes. I hope we have some time for questions. If we do, we'll take them. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. I will be describing to you, slide please, my work at BIODYE, what I do both at our factory in Sawantwadi and across the country. Right, so can I have the first slide, please? Okay, this is the title of my talk, Walking Back Towards the Production of Textiles in a Sustainable Manner. The reason I gave that is because India was always producing textiles in a sustainable manner, and how do we walk back to that point in time? And these are our shade casts to just show you that with natural dyes, we can actually achieve the entire spectrum of shades and fast shades. Next slide. Now, this is history. You see, India was essentially at the hub of the spice trade. I don't know if you know that, but what the spice trade really meant was that the Europeans would give us bullion, gold, and silver, exchange it for Indian textiles, which they would then take to the east, exchange it for spices, and then come back, and that's how the trade went, okay, and take those spices back to Europe. The reason they needed the spices was because it really masked the taste of bad meat. Right? So it was also very interesting when I was doing this slide that I realized that Indian textiles were also responsible for the slave trade. As you can see, that the British took our textiles, re-exported it to Africa, brought slaves with it, and then took the slaves across to America. Right? So that was, all I can say is our Indian textile was the dollar of its day, right? Involved in entire international commerce. The next slide, please. Now, why were Indian textiles so sought after? You can see right from the Romans and the ancient Persians, all of them telling you how great Indian textiles were. And the reason that it was so was because of the variety of fine fabrics that we have. If you have a look at it, 73 yards of Dhaka Malmal, a yard wide, weighed only 1 pound. So it was that fine. We had fantastic embroidery, woven designs like brocades and jamdani, block printing, resist dyeing, painting like kalamkari, and making different types of rugs and carpets. So it was this entire gamut of textiles that we produced over here that really kept the entire trade going. And essentially, we had 25% of the world GDP at that time. So you can see why everybody wanted to come to India. The Mughals, the Europeans, everybody wanted to come here just because of our textiles. Okay, and this is what we have to get back to. And we did all this without polluting the environment. Okay, that has to be kept in mind. Now, what really contributed to these textiles? Right? So one was Desi Cotton, which is also known as Gossypium arboreum, and its common name is tree cotton. I want to bring that up because I will talk about it in my next slides. And tree cotton should not be confused with silk cotton tree, which is the kapak or what we normally use to stuff pillows, but which cannot be spun. Now here there's a very nice quote from a Greek historian, which basically says that trees in India, you have wool growing on it. And that's how we got the name cotton wool in Germany. The next thing that was very important for our quality textiles was this finger spun khadi. Not the ambar charka khadi, but the finger spun khadi, because with that, you could really get very fine cotton. Of course, handloom weaving was very important to get those variety of fabrics, and fabrics which really felt very comfortable in your body. Then, of course, the whole yarn dyeing, fabric printing with natural dyes, because it gave you a whole variety of shades which are very fast. And that's it. Back again, I quote, a biblical line which says that, it was even known that the dyes were that fast. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, these are some of the paradoxes I would like you to think about, which for some time I was wondering why these things were there, and then I found answers to that. We all learned that if we want fine yarns, we need log staple cotton. But the finest fabrics, that is Dhaka muslins, were used Desi cottons, which were short staple. How is that possible? Then we always know as handloom khadi has been described as being cool in summer and warm in winter. How is that possible? The next thing is all the tribes in the northeast of India, they use cotton to keep themselves warm. Cotton shawls, not woolen shawls. Right? And now, we have this myth being propagated that cotton is a very bad fiber. Reason is because it guzzles irrigation water, it gobbles up fertilizer, and it bathes itself in pesticide. So we should try to shift to linen, we should try to shift to flax, to hemp, to flax, hemp, jute, other fibers which don't have such needs. But I'm going to describe to you in the next slide, can I have the first slide, please? A Naga tree cotton, the previous slide, please. You see, the Naga tree cotton grows without irrigation. It does not require fertilizer or pesticides, and it yields more lint than most Indian annual cottons. Right? So the next slide, please. Next slide. So this is the Naga cotton, Gossypium arboreum var. Burmanniaceum. That's a 1-year tree, and that's a 4-year-old tree. This tree can grow at least to 20 years because the Nagas practice jhum cultivation. After 20 years, they have cut the tree. You see? And these are the cotton balls. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, these are the properties of the cotton that I had analyzed. As you will see, the life of the tree is 15 years, and I'm comparing it to the first Indian long staple, extra long staple cotton MU5. Right? So I'm comparing a Desi variety, which was here in India for thousands of years, with a variety that the government of India bred, expending a lot of money. So you can see that the life of the tree is 15 years, so it means that you don't have to every year go and plant the crop. And the penalty that you pay, it only starts yielding from year 2 onwards. It doesn't yield much cotton ball in the first year. Now it has no need of irrigation. It's a rain-fed crop. It needs no fertilizer because it's a tree, its roots go deep into the soil, pulling up nutrients from there, so you don't have to apply fertilizer to remake the stalk and everything of the plant every year. It has already made its trunk and its branches, so it doesn't need extra fertilizer to grow and produce cotton. And it needs no pesticide application in the area where it is growing. Now, if we look at another very important property over there is fiber-to-fiber friction. Okay, this fiber is has 3 times more friction than the extra strong MU5, which is the annual cotton. And look at the lint fiber. It yields around 370 grams of lint cotton from a kilo of seed as compared to 340 grams of MCU5. And what is the yield per hectare? Now, this is very preliminary figures. We are still in the process of expanding the cultivation to get better data. But from the preliminary figure, we can see that it's around 741 kilos of lint in the 3rd year onwards, as opposed to 646 kilos of lint per hectare of our cultivated cotton, which, as I said, eats fertilizer, drinks water, and is bathed in pesticide. Right? So you can see that actually the cotton which is growing in Nagaland is much better than all the varieties we've developed. Okay, the only thing, it requires that cold climate, and we are now trying to promote it as a cash crop for that region because there is no cash crop in that region. Right? So the Nagas can get a good cash crop if they grow this cotton. Now, if you look at the other properties, its fiber length is 32.2 mm, which is extra long staple cotton. Its uniformity index is around 86%, which is very good. But the other 2 values are slightly low because the maturity value is low. You know, these Nagas have to go down the hill and climb up to another hill to reach their agricultural plots. So when they go there, whatever cotton balls are there, they just collect it. So the maturity value is low. Now, we've told them just wait, collect only the mature cotton, and I'm sure when they do that, you'll have those other 2 values also going up. Right? So the take-home lesson is if we go back and use our Desi cottons, we can get much better products and a much more sustainable product. Can I have the next slide, please? Right? This is a rural Naga spinning mill. Right? These are all the tools that they use to spin cotton, and the next little video you will see how they do that. Can I have the next slide, please? Can you start this slide? This is their gin. This is their blow room. Here they are making rolags, or what you would call slivers or rovings. This is how they spin the cloth. Now here, as you can see on this spindle, they have very underspun cotton. And it is this underspun cotton that is responsible for keeping them warm and in winter and cool in summer. Because the amount of air it entraps keeps them warm in summer, in winter, and the wicking effect of the cotton keeps them cool in summer. So this is a community effort that they do. They sit down and they essentially make their yarn that way. This is the shawls they make to keep themselves warm in winter. Now, usually used the very colorful Naga shawls, but these are the actual shawls they use in the village. Right, so this is the factory process. Next slide. Now, after I've described how the fiber is a good fiber is grown and how it is converted sustainably into yarn, let's get to the natural history of dyeing in India, which is something that I specialize in. So these are some of the historical notes, which I'm sure most of you would know. And it was really synthetic dyes that broke the backbone of this sustainable industry, which we had for 1,000 years. Right. Next slide, please. 19 years ago, I entered the field, and this is what was the status of natural dyeing at that time. The dyes were supposed to be bleed, fade, poor perspiration fastness, no lack of synthetic dye materials, and where the color range was very poor. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, one of the first things that we have to do is, when we do natural dyeing, the first thing we have to do is define what natural dyeing is. If you go to any dictionary or go to any encyclopedia or anything, I did not find a proper technical definition of natural dyeing. Right? So one of the first things I did was give a technical definition of natural colorants, which I will show you later. I will just run through it. You can always go to my website to have a better look at it. Now, the second thing is, what we did is we only use sustainable sources of dyes and non-toxic mordants. When I say sustainable sources, I mean only leaves, fruits, and regenerative vines. Okay? We don't use bark, we don't use roots, we don't use wood. Then what we did is we don't like to waste. Synthetic dyes have a very short shelf life. We are using dye powders which are 8 and 9 years old. We've really extended the shelf life of natural dyes. Then I had to develop the chroma culture, that is the agriculture of how to grow Naga madder, which I will introduce you to. It's a different type of madder, which what we call manjasta, which is the Indian madder. And we also had to develop technologies to grow other dye plants. Then another important thing that we did was bioscarring. That really, made the whole process extremely environmentally friendly. Then we had fast colors. Our fastest ratings are 3-4 or more, and indigo has a very good fastness of 3 and more. Then we shortened the dyeing process from days to hours. You see, because natural dyeing really took a long time. The old Telgari process took weeks on end. We can dye red in a few hours. And as you saw on the first slide, and I'll show you even later, we have the full spectrum of bright, deep, and pastel hues on cotton, flax, silk, and wool. So all natural fibers, we can dye them. Then the next thing I did to expand my dye palette, I bought lac onto cellulose. Earlier it was only used to dye silk and wool. And we get jet blacks, because otherwise usually with natural dyes you get elephant grays or brownish blacks. We got jet blacks with very good perspiration fastness. Poor perspiration fastness is one of the limitations of blacks elsewhere in India. And the next thing what we discovered, which is a good marketing technique, is it suppresses body odor. Right? So I'll describe these things to my slides. Now, this is the technical definition of natural dyes. I don't want to go into it, but to just show it to you, the definition is there and examples which support the definition by its side. The next slide, please. And these are the notes for that definition, right? You can go to my website to really look at it. The next slide. These are the dyes we use. See, when I entered the field, the hypothesis was you want a different color, you had to have a different dye plant or a different mordant. And that's how you got your different shades. What we did is we found the primary colors which are bright and clear. And we learned the art of blending those colors to give it the entire shade. So we have very few colors, very few dye plants. With those few dye plants, we get the entire spectrum of shades. Okay, so there's indigo, there is madder over there, there is guava leaves, there is myrobalan at that end, there's alum and lac. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, that bush that you see over there is Indian madder. Okay, while this side, this one little stalk is Naga madder. So when I went to Nagaland, I found this plant was described by the British, and this is a much better plant to extract red than the Indian madder manjista, because this plant is more sturdy, it grows at lower altitudes, and and now with global warming, we are finding that the Rubia cordifolia is climbing up and up, okay, its habitat, while Rubia sycamensis is taking its place. It's stouter, there's more yield per hectare because of that, and therefore this is a much better plant for red than our conventional Indian madder. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is bioscarring. That's something that we did. We make our own enzymes, and then we bleach, we scour the yarn and bleach it with peroxide. Can I have the next slide? So now this bioscarring process of ours uses 170 times less sodium than the conventional clear boiling process. Okay, that's the amount, how much less sodium we use, which basically means that we are not making the soil or anything that we discharge it alkaline. Right? It takes us only 45 minutes to bioscar at 50 to 60 degrees as opposed to 2 to 12 hours boiling in a cure. So enormous savings in fuel and time. Right? And as I said, there's no salinity, low salinity and non-toxic wastewater. Also, the strength of the cotton yarn increases after bioscarring. That's a plus. And it's softer. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, this shows us, the dyeing of cellulosic. Those are embroidery threads of eri silk, and this is a dari that we weave at Sawantwadi. I particularly chose this dari because there's a whole, different shades on it. And when you weave a dari, you have to wash it with hot detergent and brush it with a bristle brush. So it has to have very good wash fastness and wet rub fastness, right? Otherwise, you will not be able to produce this dari. And then this dari is kept, in your room, partly in the sun and partly in the shade, partly covered with furniture. So it has to have very good light fastness also. So the fact that these daris are selling for something like 2.5 lakhs in Europe, they wouldn't sell if it didn't have these properties. Right? So that is that's the proof of what we do. This is our red dyeing process. That's a modern trend yarn. We just dip it into the dye, and about 45 minutes later, this is what comes out. So these are you can have the next slide, please. This is cotton, and here are some silk fabrics also dyed with it. This is the latest collection of one of our US clients. Right? Next slide, please. This is, can you just, so this will show you the end. I took all our shade cards, wool, silk, cotton, everything, and just spread it on the table and just took the shot to just show you that we have the entire spectrum of colors and this thing. Can you go to the next slide? There's a shortage of time. This is a lac on pink, again in cotton. Next slide. That's the black, jet black, you can see in both these slides. Now here is where I was talking about body odor suppression. You wear our t-shirts, you can wear them for days on end, and in the evening the t-shirt will not smell. If it is black, you just turn it inside out, air it, the next day you can wear it again. Right? So you really save a lot of water on washing, and it's ideal for students because they don't want to wash their clothes. You're traveling, take some of these t-shirts, you don't have to wash them during your journey. The next slide, please. Besides that, we discovered certain non-textile benefits. For example, when we use tannic myrobalan or harda solution, which is a tannic acid solution as our mordant. When we finish with it, we spray it on plants. We don't get any moths or butterflies laying eggs on those plants. Okay, there is a reason for it because the butterflies think those leaves are damaged, and therefore we trick them to think their leaves are damaged and they don't lay eggs on it. So it's really an alternative to BT. You don't need BT. We had an infestation of our brinjals with moths. We sprayed this and we could get, there was no more moth laying eggs on it. Then we use our sludge as manure. We've been using it to irrigate our coconut and cashew plantations for 12 years with no ill effects on the soil. Can I have the next slide, please? Now this is the last thing I would like to do because this is our social aspect of our company. We work very closely with handloom weavers. Because and the real unique feature of handloom weaving is it can use single ply Kadhi slub yarn on warp and different colors of weft motifs across the same warp length. If you have such a fabric, it cannot be copied on power looms. Okay, so if you're really designing designers, if you really want to design for the handloom sector, use these two attributes in your fabric, and you can be absolutely sure that the power loom sector will not be able to copy those designs. Can I have the next slide, please? So here we will work with loin-loom weavers in Nagaland. The next slide. This is drop spindle spinners for eri silk. We work with them, and an eri silk weaving that's going on. The next slide. And this is, again, we work with an NGO in Patna who have revived the peti charka spinning and the pit loom weaving over there. Right? And I think that comes to the end of my slide. Thank you. You can see this is one, we had a fashion show once, and this model is wearing all the colors. Right?
Thank you, Dr. Bosco. That was wonderful. Lovely to hear about what you're doing, and I'm sure it's inspiring for everyone.